Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm super excited about today's video because today I'm going to film my February's update for my shop My Shadows, and this is currently my favorite series, my favorite thing what I'm doing here in YouTube. So if you haven't seen these videos from me before, in 2019 I'm rotating through my whole eyeshadow collection. My goal is to use all of my eyeshadows at least once during this year. If you want to know more about this series, I will link the playlist down below. I did the intro in the end of December last year, and I did the January update in the end of January. So if you want to see those videos, the playlist is down below. In the intro I will explain more what I'm doing it and how I'm doing it. And today I'm going to update you about the eyeshadows I have been using in February, and I will of course show you the eyeshadows I will be using in March. Let's start with my Panda palette. So you probably know it already, but I am panning this BH Cosmetics Carli Bybel palette. I started to pan this in April 2018 and I'm going to pan it till April this year. So a couple of more months still. I didn't film a Panda palette update this month in February, and I told it in my Panda palette January's update because I wasn't expecting to have a lot of progress, and I haven't really had a lot of progress. This gold and this copper eyeshadow I actually used only once in February, but surprisingly I have been using these matte plums. I was complaining about them in my Panda palette January's update, that I'm getting so sick of them, but now all of a sudden I have been enjoying them. Okay, then let's move on to other eyeshadows that I did have in my February's rotation. So I did have 4 eyeshadow singles from Makeup Geek. I do have this 1C palette. I'm pretty sure I need to get another one because I'm pretty sure I'm going to do quite much depotting this year, and this one can't hold that much more of eyeshadows. There is still a little bit room, but in this palette I do have 12 eyeshadows from Makeup Geek. So these 4, and these 4. And these eyeshadows over here are my depotted eyeshadows from my theBalm Shady Lady Special Edition palette. And that palette was in my rotation in January, and I did keep these 5 eyeshadows and I did move them to this palette. So in February I did have 4 eyeshadows from Makeup Geek in my rotation. They were these pink eyeshadows over here. All of my other eyeshadows from Makeup Geek are foiled except for this one. So this is called Anarchy and it is their normal eyeshadow, and I think it's this kind of like a cranberry eyeshadow. It is like a satin finish. Then this another cranberry shadow is Curtain Call and it is their foiled finish. I did use both of these at least a couple of times in February and I did really enjoy them, and these I am for sure going to keep. They are not like my go-to eyeshadows all the time. In February I have been into quite romantic looks and I really have been enjoying these. Then these 2 lighter eyeshadows are called Nostalgic. It is like a light pink, and then Luna. And this Luna is more like pink, little bit cool toned rose gold, and it was originally from the Makeup Geek and Manny MUA palette, but now it is also sold as single. So this is Luna, and I must say that I really do love this shadow. It was one of my favorite eyeshadows for the whole month of February. I absolutely love it. It's such a beautiful, more cool toned rose gold. But I must say that this eyeshadow Nostalgic I don't really like that much, and I'm actually going to declutter it. So it is this pale baby pink foiled eyeshadow. I don't hate this color at all, but I also don't feel I need this type of color in this finish because it's so foiled. This kind of light pink eyeshadow is something I could use to highlight my inner corner if I want something super highlighting, but I feel that then I can just use my face highlighter. Another thing that I could use this kind of light pink eyeshadow is on my whole lid, but in that case I don't like the eyeshadow to be that foiled because it can make my hooded eyelids to look a little bit crepey and not that cute. So actually if I'm going for light pink eyeshadow look and I want it to be shimmery, I would prefer something like this. So this eyeshadow is Lucius Lani from theBalm Shady Lady Special Edition palette, and I just think it is more flattering all over lid for myself and my lids. I do like foiled eyeshadows all over my lid, but not if it's super light. Okay, then let's move on to palettes I did have in my rotation. In February I only did have two, one completely matte eyeshadow palette and then my main palette. So let's start with my matte eyeshadow palette, because for me completely matte eyeshadow palettes are usually something that I like to use together with shimmery eyeshadows. For example, with the shimmers from my Pantone palette or with those Makeup Geek singles. But I pretty rarely do all matte looks. If I do an all matte look, it's usually something light cream color in my lid and then something brown in my crease. Sometimes I may do like matte smoky eyes, but I don't do them that often. So the all matte eyeshadow palette I did have in February in my rotation is this theBalm Mint Matte Trimony palette. And I told it in my January's update that this is one of my least used palettes in my collection. It's really a shame because I truly enjoy theBalm's matte eyeshadow formula. It is really creamy, it's pigmented, and it's easy to work with, but I think my issue with theBalm eyeshadows especially is that, or with these Mint Matte palettes, that I don't think they are cohesive palettes. I have both this one and the Mint Matte Nude, and I'm actually going to show you the Mint Matte Nude palette too. So this is theBalm Mint Matte Nude palette and this is theBalm Mint Matte Trimony palette. Both of them are like a mix of warm tones and cool tones that are so hard to combine in one look. I think it would be much better if it was one more cooler tone palette and one more warmer toned palette. And that is why usually when I want to reach for one of these, I'm going to reach for both of these. I actually knew it even before February that I am going to depot this theBalm Mint Matte Trimony palette, and I also know that I am going to depot the Mint Matte Nude palette once I have used shadows from that palette in my rotation. But my goal with this palette really in February was to figure out which eyeshadows I'm going to keep and which I'm going to toss when I have depotted this one. So I'm actually going to keep 5 eyeshadows from this palette and I'm going to declutter 4 eyeshadows from this palette. I wanted to think about which eyeshadows could be useful in my C palette. Some of those eyeshadows that I'm going to declutter from this are maybe nice eyeshadows, but I don't think they are something that they need to take space in my C palette, especially since these eyeshadows are quite big. So let's start with those eyeshadows that I am actually going to declutter. So I'm going to declutter this shade Matte Thomas. It is like a light baby pink shade. I really don't like this kind of matte eyeshadows. I do like baby pink eyeshadow once in a while, like in my lid, but I prefer it being shimmery. I don't like it being matte, and I actually don't do anything with that kind of shadows. Then I'm going to declutter this shade Matte Rossi. I think it looks kind of nice in the pan. It is this more cool toned, even almost like taupey type of brown. It is really cool. This one is something that even if it looks nice on pan, I don't think it looks really flattering. Not when I swatch it and not when I put it to my eyes. Another thing is that I really don't have any eyeshadows in my C palette or otherwise a lot of eyeshadows in my collection that could go beautifully with this eyeshadow because it's so cool toned, and I just prefer more warmer toned neutrals. I do have some cooler toned eyeshadows, but still there is something in this that doesn't really go well with those cooler toned eyeshadows I do have. Then I am going to declutter this shade Matte Moscovis. That is this deeper plum eyeshadow. I don't hate this eyeshadow. I actually think it is really nice plum. However, I really don't need it. You know, if I'm going to reach for matte plum eyeshadows, I do have palettes that do have all matte plum eyeshadows, like transition shades and crease shades. Not only something that is really deep to deepen up the look. I'm actually going to show you an example. So this is the BH Cosmetics Modern Mattes eyeshadow palette. And if I need a deep plum, I do have it over here. I actually do have 2 deep plums here. Maybe they are not quite as intense as the deep plum in the Meet Matte Trimony palette. However, these are enough for me, and also I do have here like plum transition shades. You know, I just don't need to hang on to the shade Matte Moscovis from this theBalm Meet Matte Trimony palette. And same goes to this eyeshadow Matte Ahmed, that is a black eyeshadow. I do have plenty of blacks in my collection. I don't need one to take space from my C palette, and I actually do reach for black eyeshadow pretty rarely. Then the rest of the 5 eyeshadows from this palette I am going to keep. So Matte Lin, it is pretty basic shade. It is like this light cream shade. This is pretty warm. It has some yellow in it, but I think this is a really useful eyeshadow in my C palette. It's nothing unique to my collection, but it's something I could see myself reach for a lot with other shades from my C palette, and otherwise I do really enjoy the color. Then I'm going to keep this shade Matte Lopez. So it is like an orangey, quite light brown. It is super warm, beautiful for bronzy, golden eye looks as transition and crease shade. Then I am going to keep this shade Matte Kumar. It is this matte red eyeshadow. I have really hard time describing it. I think it is kind of like a cranberry, but I think it's really nice red because I think it goes with both more cooler toned eyeshadows. Like in February I have been wearing it with more cool toned eyeshadows like with pinks, but also I think this is something that could go beautifully with warm toned eyeshadows like with golds, for example. So I think it's really versatile shade, and actually it is pretty unique to my collection. Then I am going to keep this shade Matte Evans. It is this neutral light brown, beautiful transition shade. And then I'm going to keep this shade Matte Red, that is a deeper brown. It is pretty neutral. So yes, these eyeshadows that I'm going to keep, well, Matte Kumar is actually pretty unique to my collection. I don't have similar eyeshadows, but the other eyeshadows I'm going to keep, they are probably something I have somewhere in my collection, but I don't have any matte eyeshadows in my C palette. Then let's talk about my main eyeshadow palette that I did have in my rotation in February. So it is one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes from my whole collection. It is my oldest eyeshadow palette. It has a lot of sentimental value to it, but also I think it is a great palette. And it's also what I'm wearing today. So I am talking about my Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette. Today I am wearing this shade Marzipan, like in the inner part of my lid, and then this shade Amaretto in the outer part of my lid. And I'm also wearing in my crease this Milk Chocolate, semi-sweet cherry cordial, and milk chocolate I'm wearing in my brow bone. It is really nice palette, and this one I am obviously going to keep. Well, this palette is not the newest one. Like, eyeshadows do improve all the time, and this is years old, but I still think the quality is great. There are some eyeshadows that are not my personal preference, but overall I think the quality is really nice. The mattes are really good. They are blendable, pigmented, easy to work with, and then the shimmery eyeshadows that are more like metallic finish are so stunning. My favorite is this shade Marzipan that I'm wearing today. With this one I'm so close to hitting pan. I think if I used it like one more week I probably would hit pan. Also, I really do like this gold eyeshadow that is Creme Brulee. It's not my favorite gold from my collection. Actually, I do prefer a little bit more lighter gold. This is pretty deep, but you know, it is still a beautiful gold and it works. There are some eyeshadows in this palette that I don't absolutely love. Like, there are these glitter mesh shades, this Gilded Ganache and this Black Forest Truffle. They are not my personal preference what comes to eyeshadows, but I can make them work. They are like okay, but not my favorite from this palette. But I think there is only 2 eyeshadows in this palette that I really dislike. So one is this Strawberry Bonbon. It is like, again, light matte baby pink. As I said, those are not my type of eyeshadows. so I really don't like it. Also Candied Violet, that is like this more cooler toned purple, it's really not good quality, it's quite sheer glittery mess. It's not good, and also I think these two eyeshadows, they don't go that well with the rest of the palette, when the rest of the palette is so warm. Overall it is a great palette. I do really enjoy the color story. It is really neutral, but still it does have some romanticness in it. Like it does have these burgundies and this warmth, and yeah, I think I can do so much with it. I can either go with more romantic look like today, or then I can do something more bronzy, warm type of looks. But it is really good, and I think this is something that I'm going to pan some year. Before we get into the March eyeshadow picks, let's quickly go through the numbers. So in February I did have in my rotation 33 eyeshadows. I'm going to keep 28 of those eyeshadows and 5 I'm going to declutter. So 1 of those Makeup Geek singles and 4 from the Balm Mint Matte Trimony palette that I'm going to depot. Okay, but let's move on to those eyeshadows I'm going to use in March. I think my overall color story what comes to February was really romantic, and to be honest, I'm ready to move to a little bit different color stories. So I'm actually super excited about these eyeshadows I'm going to be using in March. First of all, I'm going to keep my Pandat palette in my rotation. I do have still 2 more months to work with this palette. I actually don't think I'm going to use this gold and this copper at all, because I do have these eyeshadows in my main eyeshadow palette that I'm going to show you later. But I really wish I could still make a little bit of progress with these matte plums. I'm not like forcing myself to wear them, but I think they might be something that, you know, I could enjoy in March. So other than my Pandat palette, my first pick to March is this BH Cosmetics Foil Ice Cool to Co eyeshadow palette. So this is a small 6-pan eyeshadow palette that does have 6 eyeshadows from the BH Cosmetics Foiled Ice Cool palette. I'm not pretty sure what the palette is exactly, but this is such a nice palette, and I think it is exactly those colors I would reach for in March. I do have 2 matte eyeshadow palettes that I'm going to pick to my rotation for March, but this first one is actually something that I'm going to keep in my rotation for the whole spring, because this is so large palette that it would be too overwhelming for me to use all of these eyeshadows in 1 month. So I decided to keep myself 3 months with this palette. The palette that I'm talking about is this BH Cosmetics Modern Matte eyeshadow palette that I already showed to you. So actually the reason why I decided to pick this for spring is that it does have some really nice and springy colors, and in March I'm probably just going to reach for these purples with the BH Cosmetics Foil Ice Cool to Co palette. If I need some matte purples with those eyeshadows, I do have them here. And also I think these cool toned eyeshadows in this corner, like these 2 blues and this grey and this black, they might be something that I'm trying to use in March. But what comes to these neutrals, I try to stay away from those. Then the another matte eyeshadow palette I'm going to use in March, I have also showed you already in this video. So in March I'm going to use this theBalm Meet Matte Nude eyeshadow palette. And I already know that I'm going to depot this palette. I just want to figure out which shades I'm going to keep. I'm of course going to keep these eyeshadows that have pan in them, but also maybe these browns are something I would keep. I don't think I'm going to keep these cooler toned eyeshadows, I really don't like them that much. Also this yellow, it's really not something I need and to use, but we'll see. I'm going to reach for this eyeshadow palette if I need matte neutrals. Then there is only my main eyeshadow palette left, and I'm actually really excited about this one. So my main eyeshadow palette in March will be this ColourPop I Think I Love You palette. So I think this is one of the less talked about palette from ColourPop, but I really do like this color story. Most of the ColourPop palettes are not vegan, but this one is. I bought it in early 2018 and I really haven't been using this palette a lot. I think it is because I started my Panted palette with my BH Cosmetics Carli Bybel palette in April, so I only had this couple of months before I started the Panted palette, and then I have been wearing mainly my Panted palette when I have gone towards more neutral looks. But I'm actually really excited to be using this. I absolutely love this color story. I know I may be a little bit boring in somebody's opinion what comes to eyeshadows, but I just love neutrals. And this has such a nice variety of different warmer neutral eyeshadows. It has some beautiful golds, it has some bronzes, coppers, it has some rose gold. It's just absolutely stunning. But I'm actually really excited to be using this because I have often been thinking that this could be the palette if I could keep only one palette from my collection. I actually did the if I could keep only one tag about a year ago, and I did mention in that video the Juvia's Place Nubian 2 palette, but I think I might keep this one instead. It just has everything I need. I really don't need anything more complicated. I really need these neutral, beautiful eyeshadows. So those are the eyeshadows I will be using in March. So in total, I do have 31 eyeshadows that I actually need to use in March, and then I do have 28 eyeshadows in that BH Cosmetics Modern Matte eyeshadow palette, but I don't need to wear all of those eyeshadows. That was everything for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. See you in my next one. Bye bye.